Let me tell you something. There are two things a trucker fears on I-80 through Wyoming in January: black ice and boredom. The ice can kill you, but the boredom, man, that'll rot your soul right out of your ears. It's a special kind of nothing out there, mile after mile of white blowing sideways, the horizon just a fuzzy suggestion that the world doesn't actually end 10 feet in front of your grill. The only company you got is the deep chesty hum of the diesel engine and the ghost of the last lukewarm coffee you chugged at a Flying J 2 hours ago. That day, the snow was coming down thick, real Old Testament stuff, like God himself was up there shaking a giant feather pillow over the whole damn state, and he was angry about it. My wipers were fighting a losing battle, slapping back and forth, like a nervous tick on the face of my rig. They'd clear a patch of glass for half a second, just long enough for me to see more white hell. Then it'd be gone again. I had Big Bertha, my Kenworth W900, pointed east, hammer down just enough to make progress without becoming a 50-ton hockey puck on a mission to meet my maker. The heater was cranked to the max, blasting that beautiful dry air that smelled like Dazzle fumes, hot metal, and hope. It's a smell that gets in your clothes, in your skin. To most folks, it stinks. To me, it smells like money. I had my thermos of black coffee, hot enough to scald a sinner and thick enough to stand a spoon up in, and a half-eaten bag of greasy beef jerky on the passenger seat. Life was good. Or, you know, as good as it gets when you're a 300-pound gorilla in a steel cage rolling through a blizzard, 1,000 miles from a decent hamburger. And then I saw it, up ahead through the swirling curtain of white, a set of hazard lights, flashing like a desperate electronic heartbeat. Blink, blink, blink. A little spark of trouble in the endless gray. It was a fancy SUV, one of them Lexus things, the color of champagne. The kind of car that probably has heated seats for your damn Chihuahua and a navigation system that talks to you in a polite British accent. And it was nose down in a snowdrift on the shoulder, looking as sad and useless as a screen door on a submarine. But it wasn't the car I was looking at. It was the figure standing next to it, waving her arms. Even through the storm, through the hypnotic slap of my wipers, I could make out the shape. And, brother, it was a shape worth noticing. A shape that made the boredom melt away like a snowflake on a hot griddle. I eased off the throttle, my boot coming off the accelerator like I was petting a kitten. I let the Jake brake take over, and the whole world answered with a deep, guttural growl, rumble, rumble, groan. It's a sound that shakes the fillings in your teeth, a beast clearing its throat. Big Bertha's cab vibrated, the dashboard rattling, my coffee sloshing in its cup holder as the massive truck slowed to a crawl. The closer I got, the clearer the picture became. And what a picture it was. This wasn't some lost college kid in a hoodie. This was a woman, the real deal, a genuine bona fide, 100-proof woman. She had on one of them puffy winter jackets, the shiny black kind that makes you look like the Michelin Man, but underneath, Lord have mercy. She was wearing yoga pants, tight black yoga pants, in the middle of a Wyoming blizzard. It was the most beautiful, idiotic thing I'd ever seen. The snow was clinging to them, the wet flakes outlining a set of legs and a backside that could make a bishop kick a hole in a stained-glass window. The fabric was stretched taut over thighs that were toned and strong, and the curve where her leg met her hip was a perfect, elegant line drawn by God himself on a very good day. I pulled Bertha up alongside her, the sheer size of my rig blocking out the wind for her. The engine idled with a deep, chesty rumble that vibrated right through the floorboards and up my spine. It's a feeling I know better than my own heartbeat. I hit the button on my door, and the passenger window hissed down, a smooth electric sound, letting a blast of Arctic air into my warm cab. It was so cold it felt sharp, like inhaling tiny invisible needles of ice. It slapped me in the face and woke me right up. She squinted up at me, her face red and raw from the wind. Little snowflakes were caught in her eyelashes, sparkling like tiny diamonds every time she blinked. She had to be pushing 40, maybe a year or two younger, but she was one of them women who took care of herself. You could just tell. It wasn't about makeup. It was about the structure underneath. Good bones. There were faint lines around her eyes, but they were laugh lines, not worry lines. Her hair, a dark, rich brown, was whipping around her face, escaping in wild strands from a little gray knit cap. She looked like a damn mess, and it was the most attractive thing I'd seen in a month of Sundays. "You stuck, darlin'," I yelled over the wind and the engine, my voice booming in the white emptiness. It felt like shouting in a vacuum. "Does it look like I'm practicing my winter parking skills?" She shouted back, her voice tight with frustration and cold, but it carried. There was a little bit of fire in her, a snap of irritation. I liked that. A woman with some spice, not some wilting flower. "Looks like you zigged when you should have zagged," I grinned, leaning my big elbow on the windowsill, trying to look as casual as a man in a giant roaring machine can look. "Climb on up. You're going to turn into a popsicle out there, and that'd be a crying shame." She looked at the huge step up into my cab, like it was the north face of Mount Everest. It was a long way up, a good 4 feet off the ground, and the steps were probably slick with ice. She hesitated, her eyes darting from my face to the open door and back to her useless, expensive car. I could see the calculation happening, the stranger danger lessons from childhood warring with the bone-deep, chattering cold. I don't know." "Look, lady," I said, laying it out plain and simple. No sugarcoating. Your little toy car ain't going nowhere till a tow truck shows up, and they ain't sending anyone out in this weather for a fender bender. You can either freeze to death looking pretty, or you can get in my warm truck and have a cup of questionable coffee. Your choice." That seemed to do the trick. The cold was a better salesman than I was. She nodded, her teeth chattering so hard I could practically hear it over the idling engine. It was a fast, frantic rhythm. I leaned my big frame across the massive center console, my gut pressing uncomfortably against the gear shift, and shoved the passenger door open. It swung out with a heavy, satisfying creak, a formal invitation into my world, my rolling kingdom of steel, diesel, and solitude. Watching her try to climb into a semi-truck was a special kind of entertainment. It was a slow, deliberate ballet of desperation and grace. She put a hand, clad in a thin, wet glove, on the grab bar. She hoisted a leg up, and those yoga pants stretched in a way that was truly patriotic. I felt my throat go dry as a desert bone. The fabric pulled tight, revealing the powerful, defined muscle of her calf, the elegant line of her hamstring. She was all lean muscle and soft curves, a perfect contradiction wrapped in spandex. She slipped a little on the icy step, her expensive-looking boot finding no purchase. A small cry of alarm, a sharp little "Oh!" escaped her lips. Without thinking, I shot my arm out, my big hand grabbing her elbow to steady her. My hand is a damn bare paw. It's calloused and scarred from wrestling with tarps and wrenches, and it probably smelled faintly of diesel and road grime. Her arm was thin and delicate, even through the sleeve of her puffy jacket. When my rough hand closed around her, She flinched, but not like she was scared. More like a little electric shock had passed between us. I felt it too, a jolt right up my arm, a spark in the freezing air that had nothing to do with static. For a half-second, we were connected, my strength holding her balance. I could feel the slender bone of her elbow under the layers of clothing, a surprising fragility. She tumbled into the passenger seat with a gasp of relief, pulling the heavy door shut behind her. The roar of the storm was instantly muffled, cut off as if by a switch, replaced by the low thrum of the engine and the insistent hiss of the heater vents. The cab, which usually felt massive and empty to me, suddenly felt small, incredibly small, intimate. The world outside, the swirling white chaos, vanished. It was just us. The air immediately grew thick with the scent of her, a complex mix of cold, fresh air, and something else, some kind of expensive perfume. It smelled like flowers and money, and a life I knew nothing about. It had no business being in my truck, mixed with the honest smells of diesel, jerky, and me. But damn if it wasn't the best thing I'd smelled all week. "Oh, my God," she breathed, pulling off her wet gloves with clumsy fingers. Her hands were pale, and her fingers were bright, angry red. She rubbed them together furiously, her breath misting in front of her face as she tried to get the feeling back. Her nails were perfect, painted a deep, classy red that looked like a drop of blood against her pale skin. "Thank you. I seriously thought I was going to die out there. Nah. Takes more than a little snow to kill a woman like you," I said, putting the truck back in gear with a solid clunk and easing forward to a wider spot on the shoulder, well off the road. I wasn't going anywhere for a bit. Might as well get comfortable. "Name's Sam." "Linda," she said, her voice still shaky from the cold and the adrenaline. She started to work the zipper on her big puffy jacket. It was like watching a butterfly emerge from a cocoon. The bulky outer layer came off with a rustle of nylon, and she tossed it unceremoniously into the footwell. Underneath she was wearing a simple, long-sleeved gray sweater. But it wasn't simple. Not on her. It hugged her in all the right places, showing off a figure that had clearly seen the inside of a gym. A very, very good gym. She had curves that could cause a traffic pile-up all on their own, even without a blizzard. The sweater clung to her shoulders and dipped low enough to hint at the soft, pale skin of her collarbone. The snow that had been clinging to her yoga pants was starting to melt in the focused blast of warmth from the cab's heater. Little dark patches appeared on the black fabric, making it cling even tighter to her thighs and the swell of her calf. I tried my best to look at the road, at the snow, at my logbook, at anything else. It was a losing battle. My eyes kept drifting back, drawn like a moth to a flame. The heat from the vents was blasting right at her. I watched, mesmerized, as the warmth hit her legs. The damp spots on her yoga pants slowly started to steam. A faint, delicate mist rose from the fabric, like a morning fog over a perfect landscape. I could see the defined muscle of her calf, the elegant curve of her knee, the powerful feminine shape of her thigh. My whole body felt tight. The air in the cab was thick, heavy with unspoken things. I shifted in my seat, the old leather groaning under my weight, feeling suddenly hot under my flannel shirt. "Here," I said, my voice a little rougher than I intended. I had to clear my throat. I grabbed my thermos from its holder. It was a big, dented, stainless steel beast that had seen more miles than she had. "This'll warm you up from the inside out." I unscrewed the top, the metal scraping slightly, and poured a stream of steaming black coffee into the plastic cup lid. The rich, bitter aroma cut through the sweetness of her perfume. I handed it to her. Our fingers brushed as she took it. Her skin was ice cold against mine, and that same little jolt, that same static shock, jumped between us again. This time it felt stronger, more deliberate. She wrapped both hands around the cup, closing her eyes and letting out a soft, relieved sigh as the warmth seeped into her skin. The sound was incredibly intimate in the quiet of the cab, a private little noise of pleasure that went straight to my gut. "Oh, that's heaven," she whispered, holding the cup close to her face, inhaling the steam. She took a sip, and her eyes flew open. She grimaced, a cute little wrinkle appearing on her nose. "Wow, that's strong." "Only way to drink it," I chuckled. "Puts hair on your chest and keeps you awake through Nebraska, which is a miracle of modern science." She gave me a little smile, the first real one I'd seen. It transformed her face, chasing away the stress and the cold. It was a dazzling, high-wattage smile that probably cost her husband a fortune in dental work. "I think I'll pass on the chest hair, but thank you. Really. You're a lifesaver." As she sat there, sipping the coffee, the cab filled up with her presence. The space between the seats, which was normally just a place for my logbook, maps, and greasy fast food wrappers, was now charged territory. Her knee was only inches from the gear shift. If I reached for a different gear, our legs would touch. The thought was a distraction I didn't need but secretly, desperately wanted. The cab, my fortress of solitude, had been invaded by soft curves and expensive perfume. "So, what's a lady like you doing out in the middle of this mess?" I asked, trying to make conversation, trying to think about something, anything, other than the way that wet fabric was hugging her skin like a desperate lover, or the way her perfume was starting to mix with the smell of the hot coffee to create something new and intoxicating. She sighed, her shoulders slumping a little as she looked out at the swirling snow. Her perfect smile faded, replaced by a shadow of disappointment. "I was supposed to be at a spa retreat in Jackson. My husband. He was supposed to drive me, but he had a last-minute work thing." She said, "work thing," with little air quotes, her voice dripping with a sarcasm so sharp it could cut glass. So I decided to drive myself. A little adventure, I thought. Get away from it all. "Some adventure," I grunted, glancing at her car, which was now just a sad, white hump on the side of the road, looking like a forgotten marshmallow. "Tell me about it," she said, taking another cautious sip of coffee. He does that a lot. Bails. He's always on his phone, scrolling through spreadsheets or emails. I swear, I could walk through the living room naked and on fire, and he wouldn't look up from his screen. The image that put in my head nearly made me drive off the shoulder and join her Lexus in the ditch. A woman like this, naked and on fire. I had to physically shake my head to clear it. I cleared my throat, my grip tightening on the steering wheel until my knuckles were white. "The man's a fool." It came out sounding more like a growl than I meant it to. She turned and looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. Her eyes, a soft, warm hazel, scanned my face, my big shoulders in my worn flannel shirt, the 2-day stubble on my jaw. They lingered on my hands, resting on the wheel, the hands that had just steadied her, the hands that were currently strangling the steering wheel. "You have strong hands," she said, her voice quiet and observational. "Comes with the job," I grunted, feeling a weird flush of pride warm my neck. No one had ever complimented my hands before. They were just tools. Greasy, calloused tools. "He has soft hands," she said, a little sadly, looking down into her coffee cup as if the answer to her problems was in the black liquid. He pays a woman to do his nails, a manicure, every Thursday. I damn near choked on my own spit. I couldn't help it. A short, sharp bark of a laugh escaped me. "You're kidding me." "I wish I was," she said with a bitter little laugh of her own. Her gaze drifted around the cab, at the CB radio mounted overhead with its coiled cord, the mess of maps stuffed into the door pocket, the pin-up calendar from a tire company that was probably older than she was, featuring a blonde in a bikini holding a wrench. It was a lived-in space. My space. A man's space. This is so different. It feels real. Solid. She looked at me again, her hazel eyes holding mine. "You feel solid." I didn't know what the hell to say to that. A woman like her had probably never said a thing like that to a guy like me. It felt like she was seeing right through the 300 pounds of trucker and the worn-out flannel and seeing the man underneath. So I just did what I do. I defaulted to basics. I offered her my bag of beef jerky. "Hungry?" Her face brightened instantly, that dazzling smile returning like the sun coming out from behind a cloud. "Starving." She took a piece and bit into it without a hint of hesitation, watching this classy, spa-going woman with her perfect hair and expensive perfume chew on a piece of greasy, salty beef jerky was something else. She ate it like she hadn't had a real meal in a week, with a genuine hunger that was fascinating to watch. There was no pretense, no dainty nibbling, just pure, honest appetite. She tore off a piece with her teeth and chewed with a focus that I found ridiculously sexy. We sat there for a while, the only two people in the world. The only sounds were the howl of the wind, the steady rumble of Bertha's engine, and the occasional crackle of static from the CB radio. A ghost voice from another trucker somewhere out in the white. We talked. And I mean, we really talked. She told me about her 2 kids, both away at college, one in California, one in Boston, about her big empty house in a suburb of Denver with manicured lawns and nosy neighbors, about feeling more like a piece of furniture, a decoration, than a wife. "He bought me that car," she said, nodding toward the window where her Lexus was buried, "for my birthday. He didn't even ask me what I wanted. Just, here, a new toy. Keep yourself busy." It's like he's always trying to solve a problem he doesn't understand with money. I told her about the road, about the sunrises in Arizona that looked like God had spilled a bucket of orange and purple paint across the sky, about the thunderstorms in Texas that felt like the end of the world, with lightning that lit up the whole prairie. I told her about the loneliness, yeah, but the freedom, too. The feeling of being the king of your own little rolling kingdom, with no one to answer to but the logbook and the dispatcher. I even told her about the time I hauled a load of live pigs through Iowa in July, and how the smell was so bad I couldn't taste food for a week. She listened, her eyes wide, leaning forward slightly. She wasn't looking at me like I was some dumb trucker. She was looking at me like I was interesting. Her body language had changed completely. She was angled towards me now, her coffee cup forgotten in her lap. The cab felt even smaller, the air charged and thick. Every time the truck rumbled over a patch of rough road, her knee would brush against my leg, sending a jolt through me that had nothing to do with the road. Each time it happened, she didn't pull away. The snow kept coming down, thicker and heavier. It was getting dark, the world outside turning a deep, hazy, bruised blue. The day was giving up. I was trying to figure out what the hell to do next. Maybe call in a favor on the CB to see if any tow jockeys were brave enough to come out when we both saw it at the same time. A highway patrol car, its blue and red lights painting the snow in silent, flashing strokes of color, crawling past us on the other side of the road, Behind it, a big dot truck was swinging a heavy metal gate into place. A big orange, reflective sign hung from the gate. Road closed. Linda saw it the same time I did. "Oh, no," she whispered, the coffee cup trembling in her hands. "What does that mean?" "It means we ain't going nowhere, darlin'," I said, my stomach doing a slow, heavy flip. "They've shut down the interstate. This storm's a bad one. We're stuck here for the night." The color drained from her face. She looked pale and fragile in the dimming light of the cab. For the night? Here? In the truck? The idea seemed to horrify and fascinate her at the same time. "Yep, safest place to be. We just wait for the plows in the morning." I tried to sound casual, like this happened every day, but my heart was pounding a frantic drum solo against my ribs. Stuck here, all night, with her, in this tiny warm space that was already crackling with enough electricity to power a small city. I reached over and killed the engine. The deep rumble died, and a sudden shocking silence fell over the cab. It was so quiet, it felt loud. The only sound was the wind howling outside, a low, mournful moan that rattled the windows like an angry ghost trying to get in. And without the engine, the heat was gone. A deep, penetrating chill started to creep in almost immediately. I could feel it seeping through the doors, through the glass, a cold hand on the back of my neck. "It's getting cold," she said, her voice a small puff of white vapor in the air. "Yeah, can't run the engine all night. We'll burn through all my fuel," I explained, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet. "But I got a solution." I pointed a thumb over my shoulder toward the dark space behind the seats. "Sleeper cab in the back. Got a good mattress and a heavy-duty sleeping bag. It's insulated. We can get in there, zip ourselves in. Body heat will do the rest." I said it like I was suggesting we change a tire. But the words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning, thick as the fog on the windows. We both knew what I was really saying. I was offering her my bed. I was offering to share it, the last bastion of my privacy. She stared at me, her eyes wide in the dim, fading light of the dashboard. I could practically see the war going on inside her head. The good wife, from the suburbs, versus the lonely, freezing woman sitting in a stranger's truck in the middle of a blizzard. The rules she had lived by her whole life, versus the raw, simple reality of survival. And maybe something more. The cold made the decision for her. A violent shiver racked her body, so hard I could hear her teeth click together in the silence. "Okay," she whispered, the word barely there, a puff of surrender in the cold air. "Okay." Getting into the sleeper was even more awkward, and 10 times more charged than her getting into the truck. It's a small space, a crawl-through behind the seats designed for one person, not for a 300-pound trucker and a curvy housewife. I went first, squeezing my big frame through the opening, my shoulders brushing both sides. The space smelled like clean laundry from the last truck stop and me. Then I reached back for her. She had to crawl on her hands and knees over the center console, right past me. Her hip brushed against my shoulder. Her hair swung forward and tickled my cheek. The scent of her perfume was overwhelming in the enclosed space, a heady floral cloud that made my head spin. She was so close, I could feel the warmth radiating off her skin, a stark contrast to the biting cold that filled the front cab. Her hand rested on my back for a second to steady herself as she maneuvered, and I felt the light pressure of her palm and fingers through my flannel shirt like a brand. It was a simple, functional touch, but it sent a shockwave through my entire system. The sleeper was dark. The only light was the faint alien green glow from the dashboard instruments, casting long, distorted shadows that made the small space feel like a cave. It was a small, self-contained world, just big enough for the mattress that filled it wall to wall. The sleeping bag is there," I said, my voice sounding rough and loud in the quiet. My throat felt like sandpaper. It wasn't a sleeping bag, not really. It was more like one of those massive, heavy-duty quilted blankets truckers use. A Sub-Zero rated thing with a zipper all the way around. A cocoon for one, or tonight for two. I found the zipper in the dark and unzipped it, laying it open. It covered the whole mattress. "Okay," she said, her voice trembling a little from cold or nerves, or both. "Shoes off?" "Yeah, a good idea." We both fumbled with our boots in the dark. I heard her kick hers off with a soft thud. I wrestled with my own heavy work boots, pulling them off and shoving them into a corner. Then there was the sound of rustling fabric, a sound I was becoming very familiar with, a sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice tight. "These pants are still damp," she said simply, her voice muffled slightly. "They're freezing. I'll never get warm." My breath hitched in my throat. I couldn't see a damn thing, but my imagination was running wild, painting a masterpiece in the dark. I heard a soft zzz-zip and more rustling, the delicate, intimate sound of fabric sliding against skin. It was the most erotic sound I had ever heard. I pictured the black yoga pants sliding down her long, toned legs, over the curve of her calves, revealing the smooth skin underneath. My mouth went dry. "Okay," she said finally, her voice small. I'm in." I took a deep breath, like a diver about to go under, and slid under the heavy blanket myself. The space immediately felt 100 degrees smaller. She was on her side, facing away from me, a tight ball of tension and cold. I was on my back, staring up at the ceiling I couldn't see, hyper-aware of every inch of her body that was just right there. I could feel the heat coming off her back. It was a magnetic force, pulling me in. Her back was just inches from my arm. I could feel the warmth through my shirt, a promise of what was to come. We lay there in a thick, charged silence for what felt like an eternity. The only sounds were the wind screaming outside and the frantic, heavy beat of my own heart. I was sure she could hear it, a wild drum in the quiet cave of the sleeper. "Sam?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Yeah?" My voice was a low rumble, vibrating in my chest. "Thank you for this. You saved me." "Just doing what anyone would do," I mumbled, though I knew that wasn't entirely true. Most guys would have called the cops and driven off, not wanting the complication. Another silence, longer this time. I could feel her thinking, her body still tense. Then, "He really doesn't look at me anymore," she said, her voice thick with an emotion she'd probably been holding in for years. It was a confession whispered into the darkness. "It's like I'm invisible. Sometimes I just want to be seen." That hit me hard, right in the gut. All this woman, all this life, and some fool in a suit was treating her like wallpaper. I rolled onto my side, the mattress creaking under my weight, facing her back. My body screamed at me to put my hand on her, to offer some kind of comfort, but I kept my hands balled into fists by my side, a war with myself. "I see you, Linda," I said, my voice low and serious, the truest thing I'd said all day. "Trust me, I've been seeing you since the second I pulled over." She was quiet for a moment. I could feel the tension in her shoulders lessen just a fraction. Then she slowly, deliberately rolled over to face me. In the faint green glow from the dash, I could just make out the shape of her face, the glint of moisture in her eyes. We were inches apart. Her breath was warm on my cheek, smelling of my coffee and her own unique, sweet scent. "I'm so lonely," she whispered, and it was the saddest, most honest, most devastatingly attractive thing I'd ever heard a woman say. And that was it. That was the dam breaking. That was the only invitation I needed. I lifted my hand, the one she'd called strong, and gently, almost reverently, touched her cheek. Her skin was so soft it was like touching silk. She leaned into my touch, her eyes closing, a soft, shaky sigh escaping her lips. It was a sigh of surrender. I slid my hand around to the back of her neck, my calloused fingers tangling in her silky hair. I pulled her closer, and our lips met. It wasn't a rough kiss. It was slow and deep and desperate. It was a kiss that said everything we hadn't been saying for the past few hours. It was about loneliness and being seen, about cold nights and warm bodies, about a Lexus and a Kenworth meeting on a closed highway in the middle of nowhere. Her lips were soft and hesitant at first. Then they opened against mine, hungry and searching. Her arms went around my neck, pulling me down to her. Her body pressed against mine, a shock of warmth and softness. I could feel the bare skin of her legs, cool at first, tangled with my rough jeans. I could feel the press of her chest against mine, through our sweaters. She was only in her sweater and underwear. The thought sent a bolt of lightning straight through me, igniting every nerve ending in my body. Things got heated, fast. The heavy blanket trapped all our warmth, turning the small space into a private, humid sauna. The windows, already fogged from our breath, were now completely opaque, covered in a thick layer of steam that blocked out the last of the world, sealing us in. Outside, the blizzard raged, a wild, chaotic symphony of wind and snow. Inside, we were making our own storm. The zipper on the sleeping bag groaned in protest as our movements strained it. My sweater came off, then hers, the close quarters making it a clumsy, frantic operation. Big Bertha's cab started to rock, just a little at first, a gentle, rhythmic sway. Then more, a steady rhythmic groan from the suspension, a sound that only two people creating their own friction, their own heat in a snowstorm, could possibly understand. We were a tangle of limbs and whispered words, a desperate, passionate wrestling match under a heavy blanket in the dark. She climbed on top of me, her silhouette a beautiful, powerful shadow against the faint dashboard light, her hair falling around my face like a dark curtain, smelling of perfume and woman. It was wild, and it was urgent, and it was exactly what we both needed. The whole truck moved with us, a 50-ton cradle groaning a private song into the Wyoming night, a secret kept between steel and snow. The world outside ceased to exist. There was no snow, no closed highway, no boring husband with soft hands, no lonely road. There was only the darkness, the suffocating heat, the slickness of sweat, and the two of us finding a frantic, perfect, glorious moment of connection in the middle of nowhere. I woke up to silence, a deep, profound quiet that felt heavy and absolute. The wind had stopped. Faint gray light was filtering through the steamed-up, icy windshield, painting the cab in soft, forgiving tones. I was on my back, the heavy blanket tangled around my waist. Linda was asleep, curled up against my side, her head resting on my shoulder, one arm thrown across my chest in a gesture of complete trust. Her breathing was slow and even, a soft puff of air against my skin. In the soft light of dawn, she looked peaceful, younger, happy. The stress lines around her eyes were gone, smoothed out by sleep and satisfaction. A small, secret smile played on her lips as she slept. I lay there for a long time, not moving, not wanting to break the spell. I just watched her, listening to the quiet. The storm was over. The world was new and clean, buried under a thick, pristine blanket of white. It was beautiful. Slowly, a rumble started. Faint at first, a vibration I felt more than heard, then growing louder, closer. The snow plows. The real world was coming back to reclaim us, its diesel engines a herald of the morning. Linda stirred at the sound, her eyelashes fluttering against my shoulder. She opened her eyes and looked up at me. There was a moment of sleepy confusion in her hazel eyes, then recognition dawned. A slow, shy, beautiful smile spread across her face. It wasn't the dazzling, polished smile from before. This one was softer, more private. It was just for me. "Morning," she whispered, her voice husky with sleep. "Morning, darlin'," I rumbled, my voice thick and low. I brushed a strand of hair from her face, my rough fingers surprisingly gentle against her soft skin. We got dressed in a clumsy, awkward silence. The raw animal intimacy of the night had been replaced by the bright, cold light of day. She found her yoga pants and pulled them on. I tried not to stare. I failed miserably. The sight was just as good in the morning light, maybe even better. I fired up the engine, and the comforting roar of the diesel filled the cab again, shaking us back to reality. The heater kicked on, blasting away the last of the chill and slowly clearing the steam from the windows, revealing a world buried in at least 2 feet of fresh powder. It was like a curtain rising on a new day. The plows had cleared 1 lane. I drove her about 20 miles down the road to the next town, a little speck on the map called Arlington that was nothing more than a gas station and a diner. I pulled up next to her Lexus, which a tow truck had already dragged out of the ditch and deposited in the diner's parking lot, looking perfectly unharmed, if a little dusty with snow. The adventure was over. She gathered her things, her puffy jacket, her purse. She turned to me, and for a second, I didn't know what she was going to do. What you're supposed to do after a night like that. There's no rule book for it. She leaned over the center console, put one warm hand on my cheek, and gave me a kiss. It wasn't like the kisses from last night. This one was different. It was sweet, and it was final. It was a thank you, a goodbye, a secret we would both keep forever. "Thank you, Sam," she said softly, her eyes holding mine, "for everything." "Any time, Linda," I said, my voice a little hoarse. "Drive safe." She got out of the truck, the cold air rushing in for a moment. She walked over to her shiny, clean car, got in, and drove away without looking back. And just like that, she was gone. Back to her life. Her big empty house and her husband who didn't see her. Maybe today he would. Maybe something in her had changed, a little spark of the storm still inside her. I hoped so. I sat there for a minute, the passenger seat looking way too big and empty. The air still smelled faintly of her, a ghost of flowers and warmth. I sighed, ran a hand over my tired face, and turned to straighten up the sleeper cab. As I pulled the heavy blanket smooth, I smelled it, her perfume. It was all over my pillow, a sweet, floral, expensive smell that had no business being in a place that usually just smelled like sweat and diesel. It was proof. It was real. I picked up the pillow and took a deep, long whiff. It was the smell of a snowstorm and a secret, of loneliness and connection. I tossed the pillow back on the mattress and grinned, a wide, satisfied, shit-eating grin. Some guys get a snow day. Sam McCarty gets a story. A damn good one. A story that would keep the boredom at bay for a long, long time. Now where the hell was that diner? This trucker was starving, and I had a feeling their coffee wouldn't be nearly strong enough to wash down the memory of the last 12 hours.